Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Best Books Ever. I am Tyler, and today we are finishing The Name of the Wind. Forgot the name of the book. The Name of the Wind, Patrick Rothfuss, chapters 70 through 92. Also, the epilogue, which isn't a numbered chapter, but we did that as well. Interesting thing about that, very much mirrors the prologue, which is interesting because you would think that maybe, given this whole story, right, this whole book so far, that it would be a little different. But it seems that the epilogue really puts into perspective that nothing has changed. You know, because the entire story that we've been reading this, thus far is a story within the story, that we are, us in the physical realm, are partaking in. So it's like, oh, interesting. And again, the number three, very important. So far, at least, right? Silence in three parts. We got the three locks in the chest. We got the three groups of Denna resin that they use against the Dracus. There's other three instances I just don't remember, but yeah. But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff here. A lot of questions, which we'll get into kind of as we get into it, but definitely at the end of the episode as well. But we already started with the very end. You couldn't get more end than the epilogue. But let's get into the actual story, though. God dang. So, I guess not even the actual story. We're with Kvothe, Bast, Chronicler, all that stuff. And, I do like that we get more and more of them, especially towards the end here, because, there's little small instances popping up of like, because I think the biggest question right now, maybe not the biggest question, but I think the question that should be on all of our minds as we're reading this is we have to remember that this is a story, not the book that we're holding in our hand, but the story that Kvothe is telling about Kvothe, the same person. But there's lots of little things that happen in the, I guess the like overworld, again with Kvothe and Bast and all that. Especially in this part that raise some questions. So like at the very end, Bast threatening Chronicler, being like, hey, focus on the happy parts of his story, not the sad parts of his story. Now that is kind of, brought up by some things that happen in the story prior to that. But I think that's telling of Bast, because so far it's like, okay, we know Kvothe, right? He used to be Kvothe. We're literally reading a story about his life, all that stuff, right? Chronicler, we kind of know what's going on with him. We don't know too much about him, but we do know, okay, he's coming here for the story. This is his life's mission, is to gather stories. And like sometimes disprove them. I think that's the whole thing with the Dracus, dragon, whatever. But with Bast, it's like, what is Bast's motivation as a character, as a person, as a fae? Because all we really know is that, like a few years ago, he became, Reshi's apprentice or whatever. And other than that, we're not really sure, like, where he came from. Was he running from something? Did he seek out, Reshi in particular? What is Bast's deal? And I think we get a little hint of it. Again, not anywhere close to an answer, but I do think we get a little hint of something, because why does he care so much? I think, it's easy to look at it and say, okay, well, he, he just cares about Reshi, he cares about him. He, he's his mentor. He wants to learn from him, and at this point, they become close friends. I wouldn't say family. I don't know that they really have that relationship, but they are friends that do look out for each other. They live in the same place, right? They spend countless hours together. He cares about him, but I'm not fully convinced. I feel like there's something more. There's gotta be like there's always something more. You know, like why did like he went as because like someone who cares about another person, I don't know that you would threaten the life of Chronicler for that reason. You know, people do drastic things for the ones they love, but this isn't a life and death scenario. It's not like someone has a knife to Quoth's throat and Bast is now going to do everything in his power to stop the knife wielder, right? I feel like there's something, but I just don't know what it is. I just have no idea what it could possibly be. Um, he wants me to get back to his old self. He was even, again, like, his methods just go a little too far for me. Where because he even said that he would take one of, Quoth's old enemies that's holding a grudge to, like, try to cash in on some revenge at this point just to get Reshi back to Quoth. And it's like, that seems a little extreme for just, someone I love is feeling kind of down lately. You know, we gotta remind him who he is. He's Quoth the Bloodless. There is some merit to what Bast is saying, because, you come here again with the prologue and now the epilogue, it does end with, someone who's waiting to die, right? And it's like, oh man, really still, even after all this? Maybe that's Quoth's thing where he's like, finally, I can tell my story and then I'll die. It's like, oh, that's sad. Um, but we do see some examples of this where when there was the fight with the mercenary, which was crazy, by the way. Clearly, they already talked about it. It was a demon, or it was possibly a type of fae that was controlling him. Very strange though, because even Bass pointed out that it was like they didn't try to hop to another body. We're all still alive, which is crazy. So weird things happen in there. Um, but I loved the moment because and I think everyone else kind of picked up on this. The first time you're reading this, I even think you're able to pick up on it because everyone's fighting and whatever, and then Quoth or Coat, whatever, Reshi, the man of many names, throws a bottle of liquor or whatever onto the mercenary, and it's like, okay, getting in the fight, that's cool. And then he dips a finger or a couple fingers into a little pie, a little puddle of liquor on the bar, starts muttering some words, and in that moment you're like, oh, he's gonna use sympathy. Doesn't use anything though, and we know what happens from there. But that just opens up a million more questions. One, like it seems Coat does not have the ability to use sympathy anymore. Either he's forgotten how, consciously or unconsciously, forgotten how. He's just lost the ability. Maybe he was cursed or something. Um, Maybe he's just immensely rusty. Like he truly hasn't used sympathy in years, and so not quite like riding a bicycle. I'm sure if he brushed up on it for a day, he'd kind of get back in the swing of things. But maybe it's something like that. But he didn't use it. Maybe there was a part of him that was holding back, where he can very well use sympathy whenever he wants, all the magic he's learned, whatever. But there was a part of him that was holding himself back. Maybe it was that like depressed, sort of part of him. A lot of questions, and then it builds to, again, some grand sweeping questions where it's like, how did Kvothe get here, right? You have the name of this series, name of the book is the Name of the Wind, but the name of the series is the Kingkiller Chronicle. We're assuming Kvothe is the king killer. He killed a king. Kvothe even says at one point, he was like, "This is all my fault. The Scrael, the like spider demons, the war, everything. It's all my fault." And Bast does not argue. So there must be some truth to what he's saying. This all kind of rolls into these theories of like, what did Kvothe do? Because right now we're like, he's at the university, right? Chilling. Not chilling, but nowhere near, in my opinion, to be someone to kill a king and start a war that also involves supernatural beings, right? It's like, how, where's that connection? And also to the point where he seemingly can't use empathy anymore. And to Bast's testimony, he is a shell of the man he used to be. It's like, what happened? What happened exactly? I'm still fuzzy on the details of like when Bast met Kvothe, because I could have sworn that Kvothe was like, oh, like mentioned it to Chronicler maybe, of just like, Bast, Bast has been under my tutelage for like a couple years. Something like that. So not very long, but then Bast talks like this where he feels like he has seen Reshi devolve. So it's like, how long? And then he says that he has met Denna once. And it's like, how, like, and then that has question. Well, trust me, we're gonna get into Denna. a lot of Denna stuff this section. Primarily, exclusively a Denna section. This last quarter of this book. But like, what happened? It's the grand question. So yeah, lots of interesting things happening in the overworld with Kvothe and not Kvothe. Let's see what else. I think that's everything for that. So now we're gonna get into the actual meat and potatoes of this stuff. Let's start with the, because I think the Denna and the Dracus stuff is probably going to be the main thing I want to talk about. So let's get, some of the outer stuff first. Archives. We've still not forgotten about the archives. Lauren has not been generous enough to let him back in. The last we heard, I think, was last part, where he was like, you must showcase your patience or something or whatever. And in Kvothe's mind, he's like, what does that even mean? That is so ambiguous that I don't like. It'd be different if he gave him like tasks and was like, here's a checklist, do all of these things. Because then Kvothe can wrap his head around that and be like, okay, cool, I can, even if they were ridiculous and like just out of the ordinary, right? He could at least look at the sheet of paper and be like, okay, I have to do all these things, He's done ridiculous things before and since with Eladin, so yeah. Seemingly he did find, well, not seemingly, he did. He found a way into the archives through the Billows, through the Underling, with the help of Ari. I do love their relationship, Kvothe and Ari. I think it's very interesting. I like that my perspective is that I don't think Kvothe really treats Ari like, he doesn't patronize her, which is nice, because clearly there's something seriously wrong with Ari. We're assuming that she was cracked, right? She like, something happened. That happens to a lot of arcanists once they reach a certain level of knowledge or whatever, we're assuming that happened with Ari. So with her somewhat fragile mind, I like that Kvothe doesn't, again, doesn't treat her like that. Like he does play these little mental games that he plays with other people with Ari, which is nice. He does go to see her. He doesn't try to um, baby her, I guess. Like he's tried multiple times to help her in ways that he would think she'd want to be helped. She rejects, and then he says, okay, you know, he says, okay, I'm not going to say this is for your own good. Let me help you. She's like, okay, all right, we'll push it. So anyway, so yeah, he is able to convince her to let her show him the under thing, which I thought was very surprising. Like when he asked, I was like, oh no way. There's gonna be some like apprehension in her voice. She's gonna look at him a way of like, wait, why? What do you, because even though they're close and he seemingly he's the only person that she lets get anywhere close to her and like talk to her and like eat food with her and stuff like that. Um, in my mind, I was like, that's a step too. That's a little, but was able to do that. He found exactly what he was looking for, placed into the archives. A lot of branching paths because of this. One, I think this opens up. Oh, there's so much actually. I just thought of like two more things. Okay, so one, this just opens up generally the under thing, right? A million different paths. What could they all lead to? Um, they could lead to some not great spots, I imagine. Maybe even the like 4-panel door. That could be interesting. They could lead to people's private rooms that he probably shouldn't be in. We also saw some weird ancient tech under there. It's like, what's going on there? What more could he find? Lots of room for malfeasance, as the university loves to call it. So that's one thing. Two, unfortunately, I hate to bring it up, but I do have to bring it up. This does open up a possible opportunity to get on Ari's bad side. Ari has been, what's the word I'm looking for? Very, not not sensitive, vulnerable. That's what I was looking for. She's been very vulnerable with him. Just their flat out interactions, but then to like actually let him into her world, or like underground tunnel world. that's that's something that I could very easily see Kvothe taking for granted. Um, I'm not sure if it'll actually happen, but if we move on to another point, I think we can all see it happening, which is, oh, this is perfect. Devi wants access to the archives, secret access to the archives. Um, I think that also helps like settle some sort of debt between them. I forget exactly what that was a part of. Um, I think it was just like a promise, and it was kind of a part of the like 20 talent debt they owed. It was like, hey, and if I ever, I'll make sure to look out for it, whatever. And then I think, yeah, I think if he can't, then he like owes her something else or whatever. Um, I forget. I didn't write down the details of that. I didn't think it was important, but yeah. So that's great because I also love the Kvothe Devi relationship. It's really good. It's good in ways that are different from the Kvothe and Denna relationship, where I don't I don't see them ever getting together. I don't think either of them have romantic feelings for each other. I think this is truly more of a friendship um, sort of thing. They have similar interests, but I don't really see any sort of romantic things happening there. Again, it doesn't reach the level of him and Denna, obviously. And also very different from him and Phala, which we'll talk about in a second. Um, So yeah, so that's great. But again, that opens up an opportunity for him to bring her down there and not tell Ari, because I think he knows that if he asks Ari, say, "Hey, can I bring someone down here?" She's gonna say no. And so I could very well see him doing it secretly. Ari maybe catching them, or just knowing that someone else was down there because that she like it's her place. You know what I mean? Like she even with the millions of branching paths, she would be like, someone else was here. You know. Um, so that's something. I mean, plus off of that though, if we're talking with the with the whole Devi thing, what does Devi want with the archive? Is it just a general sort of like hunger for knowledge that she has? Is she looking for something? Is there also something else with the with the 4-panel door that keeps getting brought up? Kvothe brought it up again to Eladin. Eladin was like, "Haha, nice try. I'm not going to tell you." A lot of stuff to think about. A lot of stuff. And then just straight up, him having access to the archives again, he's gonna get caught. We're already far enough into this episode, but I'd like to mention at least once per episode that I have read the book before, so I know everything that happens, but no spoilers, of course. I keep everything vague. But even just looking at this, it's like he's gonna get caught. Like, there's no way that it's just like, oh, I found a secret tunnel, and now we're great. Everything is all rainbows and sunshine. There's no way he's gonna get caught. He's absolutely gonna get caught. I don't know by who, but it's gonna happen. I mean, if that happens, I think he might get expelled. It's like, come on, dog. Like, you can't, you can't have this happen. But I don't know. I mean, I guess I do know, but I don't know. I don't know. To be completely transparent, I don't remember if he gets caught or not. I don't remember. But just looking at this, the evidence, it's like, come on. But yeah, moving on from the archives, though, we do have Phala, which I did bring up. Phala, yeah. And then I think everything is Denna and the Dracus stuff. So yeah, Phala. Phala is definitely reaching up there a little bit, closer and closer to, again, I don't think Kvothe will ever move on from Denna. I think even if Denna died, he would be like, well, that's it for me. I'm never gonna have a relationship because Denna was the one. But you can, mostly through word of mouth. I think Will and Sim were talking about that, where they were like, yeah, Phala definitely has a thing for you, dude. I love the moment too where he goes to Phala at night, and he asks her for the favor to meet in the archives or whatever. And then we have a nice moment where they do meet in the archives to talk about the books, the organization and stuff. Very cool. But I like his realization afterwards where he's like, I'm an idiot. I just like sort of brushed off an invitation alone with Phala in her room. I'm the biggest idiot in the world, because again, like it's not something light to take when Phala is like, hey, you want to come in? And then he's like, nah. It's like, dog, you don't. What are you doing? And I was thinking about this when I read it. I was thinking that Kvothe can get very, very blinded when he has a singular purpose. So like in that moment, the only thing was, okay, archives. I found a way to the archives. I'm gonna go to Phala. She's, she did say she would do anything for me. Favor, whatever. I'll go there. She's perfect. She's a scriv, so she can help me. And then we're gonna go and ask her about it. She's gonna say yes, and then we're gonna get to the archives. It's gonna be perfect. And in that thinking, again, something he very much has to try out, or else he will explode. So he does have to try this because he needs to get into the archives. Just kind of didn't realize that Phala's there, very beautiful, She's she just is wearing like, she just has like a, like sheet around her or whatever, inviting him inside, and he's just like, archives, books, knowledge. That's all it is. And so yeah, very stupid. But again, would he do anything? I don't think so, because like I said, he's the word love when it comes to Denna, I don't think even accurately describes it. Um, so I won't use that word. Um, and then yeah, just to kind of end off that, I'm interested to see what happens with Fela. If she gets more and more aggressive with trying to pursue Kvothe, if she finds out about Denna, whether by accident or by Kvothe or wait, I think I just misspoke. So I'll say it again. It'd be interesting to see if Fela ever finds out about Denna, either by accident or from Kvothe directly, or from like friends like Will and Sim. Maybe they let it slip or whatever. And like kind of how she reacts to that. Especially given like how Kvothe and Fela interact, in the upcoming chapters. It's not a spoiler. That's just me saying I'm sure they're gonna talk and stuff. I mean, again, like Fela is kind of his, his like, I don't know, link to the archives. Again, he has his own way in there, but she's really the only one that he can talk to. He can't ask any other scribs because they all know that he can't be in there. Even if they don't, you can't trust him, You can trust Fela because of certain circumstances, but even Fela, he was talking about it where, there's even a couple things where I'm not going to tell her because it's too dangerous, So we'll see. We'll see if that blossoms into anything. And the last thing before we just get through the entire Denna and Trebin stuff, I do like there's a little line at the end where Kvothe Kote is leaving Bast and Chronicler on a big cliffhanger where he kind of does that thing where he's like, and then this happened, and then maybe this will happen. What'll happen with that? I don't know. Tune in next week. He kind of does a little bit of that. And one of the things that caught my eye was he does say that Ambrose does eventually get his revenge, right? Ambrose, well, yeah, I guess I forgot about this. I still have to talk about this too. Yeah, I'm an idiot. Big stuff here, right? Kvothe, name of the book. The name of the book. He called the name of the wind towards Ambrose because Ambrose took his lute, tossed it, smashed it. Kvothe, of course, that is his entire life. If there's anything he loves more than Denna, it is his lute / music. And even that is kind of like, I called the name of the wind, didn't realize he did it, right? And then he went to trial, right? He was going to be expelled. He was expelled, but then the expulsion was repealed. He still get his lashes and stuff. We already, we went through that. Nothing of note with the lashes. But he basically got away scot-free. Like he had to take some lashes, which sucks. But other than that, like, he's good. He even got Ambrose to pay him 10 talents almost. Or no, 10 and something talents to get a new lute, which he spent on more than a lute because the lute did not cost 10 talents. Bought some clothes and some wine or something. And yeah. Great stuff there. Called the name of the wind. Not only that, he got his rank raised to Raylar. He beat Will and Sim to Raylar in his second term, I think. Is this still his first term or his second term? Oh no, second term because he went through admissions a second time. Yeah. So again, this whole idea, and we'll get back to the Ambrose thing in a second, but this whole idea that Kvothe kind of stumbles his way through life. He's very clever. He has a lot of knowledge. He learns things very quickly. He's very capable. But I think there's many, many moments in which he fails falls flat in his face, and then he's able to wiggle out of it. I don't think that he just wins all the time. I think if you were to, uh, actually compare the stats, I think Kvothe has way more losses than wins. But at the end of the day, he always ends on a win, and that's what's important. So even this, where it's like, ooh, loot's broken. He called, he actually hurt Ambrose, but he was kind of, everyone saw it, and now he's on trial, and he gets lashes, and he's expelled. He that all happens, but then it ends in a bunch of wins, where it's like, oh, well, actually, he's not expelled, and he gets paid way more for the loot, and he gets upgraded to a Relar, and he called the name of the win, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. That means, you get more knowledge from Eladin, all that stuff. So I think that's the big misconception with Kvothe. When people read these books and they see him as just like, oh, well, he either just wins at everything, or he gets the perfect help he needs to win at everything. I just don't think that's true. I just think he always ends on a win, so then it kind of erases the 3 losses he just took, But yeah, and then with that, like I said, with Ambrose, Kvothe does say that that Ambrose does eventually get his revenge on Kvothe. It ends up with him having to leave the university. Truly a cliffhanger, because now wheels are turning. We're like, what does he do? What does he do? How, because he didn't say that Ambrose, well, I mean, we know Ambrose doesn't kill him. I mean, unless he gets brought back to life, which, wouldn't put it past Kvothe, wouldn't put it past him. So he does something to get him expelled. Interesting. I wonder at this point what he could possibly do, because he's tried a lot. He's tried a lot of things, and if breaking his loot and having the wind called upon him didn't end in his expulsion, I can't imagine the lengths he's going to have to go to when, not if, when, because Kvothe just, confirmed that it is when it finally happens. I don't know. So, and then we get into the big stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff has already happened. We've already been talking for a while, but this is the meat of this. So, Kvothe, Denna, Drakus, Trebon, Ash. A lot of keywords here. So, where do we start? Let's just go chronologically through the highlights that I have noted. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So the first thing I have, right, I mean, we obviously know Kvothe goes to Trebon, he's looking for the Chandrian, bumps into Denna, which is crazy. All that stuff, right? That part, not important. The first thing I want to mention is, you remember when they're talking, and, they're kind of going over, you're mostly going over, like, Denna, like, her being here, the fire, all that stuff, singing, a little bit about Ash, all that stuff. And, they get more and more into it, and Kvothe very much implies that the destruction, the blue fire, it's like, it could be a Chandrian, but, like, he kind of gets Denna to say it, sort of. This eventually gets to a point where Denna asks him, like, why did you really come here, right? And I think he tells the lie about, like, oh, well, the university and, like, the people here and the Chandrian, like, he kind of, he tells a very, to any other person, a very believable set of lies. And Denna immediately is like, don't lie to me. She immediately calls him out and is like, listen, I get it. We all have secrets, but don't insult me by lying to me, basically. I know you too well, you know? You can't lie to me. And then in that moment, you know, I think Cole says like, "Ah, it's just, you know, I really wanted, I was really interested in the Chandrian, and like they might be here, and I have my reasons, but if I told you my real reasons, I think you would think I'm crazy and I'm out of my mind." And Denna says, "I believe that. I believe that." And then in that moment, Cole says that he was about 1 second away from just spilling everything and telling Denna everything about the Chandrian, his connection to it, his parents, his troop, all that stuff. He was about a second away from doing it, but he didn't. I think there's a couple things to peel back there. One, I love how Denna can call him out so easily because they know each other. They know each other at this point, and they know what kind of people they are. They know how they talk to each other, all that stuff. I love that. Um, I like that she did believe him when he told the truth, which again just solidifies they understand. Um, but then lastly, I love how Kvothe almost did it. You can tell how much he loves Denna, how much he trusts Denna. He doesn't even know her that well. Like honestly, if we as the reader take just a step back, they really don't know each other that well at this point. You know, I think by the end of the book they know each other a lot more because, we talked about how like he's lately I've been able to see Denna a lot more. But about one in every 3 times I go looking for her, I'm able to see her and whatever. But even at this point, it's like how many times like their very first meeting, um, when they barely knew each other, and Denna was going to Annalyn, and Kvothe, I think at that point was heading to the university. It's like, okay, that's one time. And then we have another time where they met again. They got reintroduced to each other when Kvothe gained his pipes. And even then, they didn't talk for very long. She found him at Anchors that one time, so that's 3. And then she stole him away from Will and Sim, and that's 4. Again, unless I'm completely wrong, and there's been many, many, many other times that they just didn't really talk about. I don't think that's true, though. I don't think that's accurate because after that last time, that's when she left a note. They didn't meet. So, on paper, from my recollection, they've only talked. They've only had 4 encounters with each other. Now I know most of them have been very long, but it's like, how well do you know a person? Especially with information like that. Like, okay, sit down. I'm gonna tell you what happened when I was a kid. Chandrian killed my parents, my whole troop. They almost killed me, but then they phased away, and they said it's because singing the wrong song. So I'm looking at the Chandrian, and there's a connection with the Emir. And then I'm pretty sure that one guy is that guy from the story. And listen, I heard a story from this man named Scarpy. He tells stories. It was in Tarbine. There's lots of baggage. Again, this whole entire book can just be given to Denna and be like, okay, here, read this, take a few hours, few days, whatever you need, read this, come back to me, then you'll be caught up. But yeah, he decided not to. And I think ultimately that was the right move. I don't think she needed all of that in that moment. As we'll talk about, she had a lot to think about, a lot of stuff on her mind that entire trip. I don't think she needed that. I think that would have been very selfish of Kvothe to do that. Although I do think eventually he has to tell her. He has to say, listen, because again, they're not very big on pasts. We know this, right? Not very big on past. They're not very big on they're very much about the current and the future. We don't know anything about Denna's past, or Denna knows about Kvothe's past. So, I think I mentioned this last time, where at some point, if they want to pursue a relationship, um, a much deeper one than the one they have, I think they will have to come out to each other and be like, hey, this is, because again, we're assuming Denna has very heavy stuff. The same way that we know that Kvothe has very heavy baggage. And I think that for them to truly understand each other, not only in the current, but also what they plan on do for their future, no matter how uncertain it is on either side, they would have to know about each other's dark past, you know? So there was that. That happened. Yeah, that happened. And then let's see, we move on to, one of the best moments, one of the most wholesome, as well as thank you for finally happening. Something finally sort of happens between them. This is, of course, past when they already knew the Dracus existed. Denna got some of the Denna resin, unfortunately. Very scary moment. I love that moment. I wasn't planning on talking about it, but now I am. Like, the fear and the mix of fear and anger in Kvothe when he, like, slaps the, like, Denner cookie out of her hand. And I love the way that they describe Denna's reaction, because to Denna, she's like, what are you doing? Like, she's furious in that moment. She's like, first off, how dare you knock away the, like, sweet treat that I was just enjoying, but also how dare you strike me? you know but then Kvothe is like, it's poison. And then in that moment, it goes from infuriated to fearful of her life. And then that just whole interaction is incredible, but also very tense, because of course we figure out Denna resin. We think, oh, too much of that, you could die, or you don't want to get addicted or anything like that. That's like in my mind, I equivalent that, equate. That's what I'm looking for. I equate it to heroin, where it's like, oof, very addictive. That's like a major, a major drug. So, like, obviously on one hand, I love how much care Kvothe has towards Denna, where he's like pulling out all the stops. He's like, spit it out. Here's some coal. Checking the pulse, checking the eyes, all that stuff. But I also particularly like Denna in this moment, because we see her in a state that we've never seen her in before. And that's afraid and quiet and very mousy, I think. Because Patrick, in my opinion, does a very good job with the Denna character. I think in general he does, and I guess maybe I'm not the authority on this, but just from my perspective, that's the only perspective I have. I think he does a very good job of writing his female characters. At the very least, not making them damsels in distress. We talked about Devi, and like Devi, I think, is stronger than Kvothe. Like, I would, like, honestly, like, we know what Kvothe can do, but I would not want to, I would not, I would not want to betray Devi in any way. Even Ari, where she doesn't have it all there, but they, again, like I talked about before, she doesn't act like a child, like, I mean, in some ways she does, because she's curious and fascinated by things, but that's no different than Kvothe. Like, in all honesty. I mean, even Phaela, who quite literally for a chapter was a damsel in distress, I think overall that shouldn't be held against her. like that, like what was it, like bone tar or whatever, like that was a skit. Like everyone was sprinting away, like and also aside from that, I get the feeling that Fela is not that. She is a much stronger character. So again, she's probably the weakest example, but even that I don't think is very bad. So you look at Denna, who matches Kvothe, or even best Kvothe, many times when it comes to intellectual sparring. In this moment, she is a child, and she's like, I'm gonna die. Oh no, So I don't know. Again, seeing her being vulnerable is something we don't ever see because we know her life on the surface, right? But like again, with the conversation with Diak and how that matches up with her being with, her being seen with so many other guys, and how tough we know she's had it, how tough she said she's had it. Um, we know that this is not her, and we know that she is tough. We know that she can make it on her own, um, and that's purely why she puts up with being fawned over, because a part of her hates it because she's like, I'm not some flower, I'm not a rose, But then part of her uses it to her advantage to survive. So yeah, that's a couple of reasons why I love that interaction. But that's not even what I was going to talk about. We're going to go to later on, where she is full on delirium, edging into exhaustion, right? We have a great moment, a very nice physical moment between Denna and Kvothe. We get a great line from her where she's talking about Kvothe. A few things. One, it's fascinating and very telling what Denna's perception of Kvothe is, because we are from the perspective of Kvothe 99% of the time, right? We've had a time here or there where from Bast's perspective, we had like barely a paragraph in there where we were in Fela's perspective, or in Kvothe's perspective. So like we know how much he loves Denna. Again, love is not even a strong enough word. We know all of this. We know how much he looks for her, all that stuff. We know how much he yearns to see her. He wishes he could see her every moment of every day. We know all this. And then from his perspective, Den is very mysterious. He even sees her as like maybe not even liking him that way. And then even goes even more self-deprecating into, well, why would she? She could have anybody, anyone that's rich and powerful and more more attractive than I, all that stuff. Why would she want me that way? But then in this brief moment, we see Denna reciprocate those feelings, and her say that Kvothe is very busy. I understand you're very busy. You can't really see me that often. She says something like, I'm so grateful and so lucky for any moment that I can share with you. Again, feeling the same way Kvothe does about her, where it's like he feels like she's like gracing him with her presence, and he should be grateful whenever she does. But it's like from Denna's perspective, Kvothe does the same thing to her, you know. And then she even goes a step further and says that she begins to say what I believe is, you don't look at me that way. You don't, basically saying that she doesn't feel that he loves her, I guess. Like, I feel like they know that they do love each other, but I think each of them thinks that the other one would never actually like, oh, but like not in that way, not in like, oh, we're gonna get married and spend the rest of our lives together. It's just crazy to me, that both of them feel that way, and it's so great because, like I said previously, where it's like, okay, they, if they ever want to deepen their relationship into something real and concrete, they will have to show each other their emotional and historical baggage at some point. But I think even something like this, where it's like, oh, because again, we're only from Kvothe's perspective, we finally get something from Denna that's like, again, vulnerable. I use that word a lot, and I think it's accurate for a lot of moments in this last quarter. We finally see her be like vulnerable, and like even if she is kind of hopped up on the Denna resin, it's like I don't think all that stuff is false. I don't think everything she says and does in these moments are wrong and uh, not her true feelings. Even though you can tell that's clearly what Kvothe thinks by the end of this, where he's like, oh well, none of that, she was on Denna res, she was delirious, she didn't mean any of that, and it's like you fool, you absolute fool. But I love that. That was great. And then even her talking about him and like, oh, you're always so delicate and you're always so careful with everything you say and do around me. Very different from, from everyone else who's very pushy, kind of aggressive when it comes to certain aspects, which we've already seen, right? Where it's like, again, Denna is the sun, and so any guy who can get any sort of attachment to her kind of like hangs on to her with like an iron grip and is like, in their mind they're like, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. And she leaves and destroys them. But I love this. I love what she says where she's like, you could push a little harder. And that floored me, because again, if you couldn't tell already, or if you didn't listen to the other episodes, romance in these stories always gets me. I don't know why, but there's a lot of fantasy writers who can do romance. I'm not saying it's incredible, not a romance fictional words expert, but they do write it in a way that always gets me. We've seen that before with Percy Jackson, which is a like an elementary school level, and then we've seen it before with Mistborn. But it's like, it's so good because she's again, Kvothe is such an idiot. He's so stupid because there's been so many moments like that. Remember a couple parts ago where he was, she found him at Anchors, right? And we wanted to walk with him, and Kvothe was like, but you're aren't you like dating or like with Savoy? Like, aren't you kind of? And he was like, oh, it's like a honor among thieves type thing. And Denna was like, steal me. And I'm like, she just said. She said, like, you do you not understand what she means by that? And even this moment, she's like, sometimes you can push a little harder. Sometimes you can, again, after this, we get to a point where she's cold or whatever. She has the blanket, she's cold, and then she wants Kvothe to wrap his arms around her, which is great. And then she even lays down. They lay down together as she falls asleep. I think that's all the notes I have. And I do appreciate that Kvothe did not take advantage of her in that moment. Even as some other points too, like when she was delirious or whatever. When they were like washing in the river or whatever, he said that there was a few moments where Denna was not so subtly, she was like inviting him over or something, which could turn very, a little spicy, And there's even in those moments where Kvothe was like, no, I can't. You're clearly not in your right state of mind. He said something where like, there are words and names for people who take advantage of women in those moments, and there are lots of words that people, very harsh words that people would use to describe me, but not that. And so I do appreciate that from Kvothe. But aside from these moments where the whole Denna resin thing, outside of that, I do think that is truly how Denna feels. I don't think it's just she was kind of high or drunk. I don't know what the correct term is for that. But like, I do think that is truly her feelings, and I do hope to see Kvothe actually take advantage of that a little bit. Not take advantage, but like oblige her request. Because you should. Because she has definitely done way more for this relationship than he has. Like, again, if we're tallying it up, way more. Another thing to note, this is gonna be a long episode, Jesus. It is the end of a book, though. Ends of books, typically are longer episodes because we're closing out an entire book, looking at the entire book in reflection. Another thing with Denna, there was the conversation about the patron, tentatively named Ash, and it was something. The moment I wanted to bring up was her talking about, well, I didn't actually run into a tree to get these bruises and stuff, which Kvothe already kind of guessed. She says that Ash said that, hey, it's going to look weird if you're the only one in this whole kerfuffle that is not injured in the slightest. They're going to suspect you. Basically implying that you should have some cuts and bruises on your body to quell any of that suspicion. Denna tries to satiate Kvothe anger and say, hey, he was very respectful about it. Everything he said made sense. He even needed me to explicitly agree to this and say that this is what she wants. All that stuff, right? Of course, from Kothe's side, he is boiling with anger. And in his mind, he's like, if I ever see Ash, if I ever see him, I will kill him. It will be the end of him. There's, of course, two sides to this, right? I mean, I guess the Kvothe side and the Denna side, right? On Kvothe's side, I totally get his anger. I like his reasoning where he's like, I don't care. Any man that would do this for any reason does not deserve you. That's basically what he said. And I get that. I mean, totally on the side of like not hitting other just other people in general. It's not only women, just in general. You shouldn't put your hands on someone else. Unless it is like a life and death type scenario, then obviously, that's different. But like, just generally as a rule, but then also in that moment, it's like, could we have not? Were there no other options? I understand where Cole's coming from, but from where Denna's coming from, she's like, even with all this, they still suspected me, but they would have put me in jail. They put me in jail and probably hanged me because I'm the only one without a scratch on them after all this tragedy happened. They already, tried to keep me under lock and key in the inn, and they didn't want me. I mean, again, we had that moment where Kvothe was kind of leading her out, and the innkeeper was like, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing over there? You can't leave." So there is a lot of merit to what Denna is saying. All this is really leading to who is Ash. He seems very, very sketchy. Comes and goes when he pleases. I don't want to learn that he's taking advantage of Denna. But it is very weird. Again, the whole like hitting thing, that's a red flag. I don't think it all automatically means that he's an awful person, but it is something to keep an eye on. And then again, other than that, we could never find him. It seems like he's always sending her to like weird places and with no real information, can't ever find him. It's very sketchy. It might turn out to be nothing. It might just be that is who he is. It's just how he is, but he really does care, and he really is a good person. Everything he does is for a reason. I guess we'll see. We have the magical moment, his Taborlin the Great moment, where he does use the Loden Stone and the scale to then mimic the iron wheel and the Drakus. And he basically shoots the iron wheel right into the Drakus. Drakus dies, goes limp, all that stuff. Fantastic moment. That and Calling the Name of the Wind, I think, are his two big Kvothe magic, sympathy, arcanist moments that we can look to, and not only look at his power, I guess, but also his knowledge and his cleverness. Name of the Wind was very reactionary, but in this moment he thought this through and he was like, this can work. Something that maybe other arcanists wouldn't have thought of doing, because he's like, how do I kill this thing? you know. So I just wanted to point that out. I think that was again adding to the lore of the Kvothe character, right? Killing a Drakus, not easy, not a simple feat. So that's pretty cool. But then I love this moment past it, because he even says that this is, out of all the things I've done in the past few days, this is the thing that makes me feel like a true hero. And that's when he's chilling, and the little girl comes in and gives him the information he was looking for. Tells him about a vase. It seems to have like Chandrian markings on it. Couldn't remember the language because she saw it for like a half a second, but there were some images depicting the Chandrian, as well as some writing or something. Very great. It is the closest thing he has to a lead, the closest thing he has to a connection to the Chandrian and where they were, what they were doing, a somewhat confirmation that they were here, because that would make sense if we're inferring from his tragedy, which is the Chandrian do not like it when anyone gets even remotely close to truths about their kind. So it makes sense. So that in itself was really cool. But then I love the hero moment, which is the girl crying, her very scared. She's saying that she's had dreams about the Chandrian since then. I don't think she says Chandrian, but she has dreams about like the monster or whatever coming to kill her. And I think when she first says it, you're like, no, girl, no, you're gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be okay. But then you think about it for a second, and you're like, the Chandrian could very well want to kill her. She may not understand what she saw, but I don't think the Chandrian care. I think it is like anyone involved, because again, they killed the entire troop. Only the mom and the dad really knew the song. No one else knew any of it. I mean, they knew like a small part of it because the dad sang a part of it, but that part didn't even mention the Chandrian, I don't think. It just mentioned the Amir mostly. I don't even think the word Chandrian was in that part. So, again, anything remotely close to them, they're like, gotta go. So, there could be some truth to what she's saying at the end of the day. But then he does give her a little disc with some runes on it or something, and is like, take this. He like links it to her or whatever. He's like, this will keep you safe. She's great. She hugs him, leaves, whatever, right? Makes her day, makes her life, And I love stuff like that, because again, the juxtaposition between what he did, this grand spectacle, iron wheel, gigantic iron wheel gets ripped from the church, slams into the Drakus. Drakus dies on impact. The church crumbles, he falls down, he passes out. He's putting out fires with sympathy. Insane, right? But this moment, where he's able to help one little girl who is scared for her life. I mean, also gave him information, I guess, but is scared for her life. It just does a small thing to be like, hey, here you go. It's beautiful, It's beautiful at the end of the day. Yep, there's that. And then just one more note, it looks like. One more note. I guess it's more Denna stuff. Sort of. It's small. I already kind of mentioned it, but yeah, he is able to see Denna a lot more frequently than he usually is. I definitely feel like that's gearing that is a false positive. He's seeing her way too much. One of them is gonna leave. Like, he's gonna have to leave and go do something. Maybe it's the whole Ambrose expulsion thing, or Denna is gonna, Ash is gonna be like, come on, we gotta go to this city that's really far away for 6 months or whatever. He's just seen her way. Like, it's too good. Again, this is true in any story. I feel like when stuff is too happy, usually means some sort of sadness is right on the horizon. because that's what makes stories interesting. Um, but all I wanted to say was that he's seeing her a lot. Um, this is the thing too with like confidence on his end, because again, I can't really talk about Denna too much from that because we're not in her head. That's why I loved the little like Denna resin thing, because we were able to get a little bit of her true thoughts. But from from Cole's perspective, it's like, don't you see like all the things adding up, all these dots connecting? Like even with this, you are seeing her very frequently, it seems, multiple times a week. And I don't know about every time, but like you're constantly seeing her with a different guy, right? Doesn't that tell you anything? That none of these guys have kept contact with her? Except you? You're the only one. And he even says, he's like, you may have her arm, but I have a relationship with Denna that none of you could comprehend. He thinks this, and it's true. It's like, I don't understand how he can think that, but simultaneously think, but Denna, she doesn't want to be with me though. Like that's not what she wants. I don't understand it. you are the only guy who is staying true, and like I don't know. It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that you can think both things at the same time. So I don't know. Still refuses to confess. I think Will and Sim make great points. I think there's some things that they say that are off. Like they even laughably mention roses, and in Quo's head, he's like, "You guys are idiots. You don't know." But I don't think that makes all of their advice bad. I think there is a point in which, I don't know. Again, don't want to spoil anything, but like I said, I don't even remember. I really don't remember. Like, does Kvothe just come out and confess? Is there a moment where that happens? I don't know. We'll see. But that is everything for this very long episode. I think this is probably the longest episode I've done. But again, one, these books, longest books I've covered so far, and two, very dense, a lot of stuff. And also, this is the end. So this is the end of the book. So a lot of stuff. That is it. Let me know what you thought of these 23 chapters. Very good. A lot of stuff happened. Let me know of anything I missed. Let's try to get into some predictions real quick. Let's think. So, what do I expect to see next time? Well, we'll just say real quick. I'll probably say it a couple times, but next week, of course, we're starting book 2, The Wise Man's Fear, obviously by Patrick Rothfuss. This book is a little longer than that one, but I do still want to keep it in manageable chunks. Am I an idiot? Did I do this wrong? No, I didn't. Right, 5, okay. We're going to read chapters 1 through 30 of this. A little more. But I do want to keep it manageable in terms of time. I don't want to spend 2 months on this. 1 through 30, that should give us 5 weeks in total to read the book. So 1 through 30, just a little more than we usually have, but this book, a lot of stuff. So, yeah, so I said that, so I can close my book now. Okay. What do I expect to see next time? First 30 chapters of next time. I mean, like I said, Ambrose is there. I don't know if we'll get any sort of Ambrose revenge that early in the book. Again, he does mention expulsion, but it doesn't necessarily mean, Cole says this, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen next book. Now, looking beyond, this is a trilogy that is unfinished, unfortunately, just to remind everybody. So we will not be reading the third book unless magically the third book gets released in the next 5 weeks, which would break the entire fantasy book fandom. it would just demolish. But it doesn't necessarily mean that this happens in the next book. Could happen in the third book. Could happen at the end, like towards the end of the second book. So I don't know that we'll see it, but I think if we're just looking at the first 30 chapters, I think there has to be something like some, again, not necessarily like the big plan that apparently Coat is previewing, but it could be some tension, some static. We see it. More Denna, like I said, I feel like it's a huge red flag that he's seeing her so much. I think they're both getting very, very, very lucky, and just based on their track record, I mean, again, it's going one or two ways. Like this, as it stands, cannot be. It just can't. I just don't see it. It's going one or two ways. Either they get closer and closer, and the days of missing each other are done, or one of them is going to get pulled away, unfortunately, for a little bit, and they're both going to have to live with that again, that feeling of not being able to see the other one for an extended period of time. I think that he's definitely going to tell Devi about the access to the archives, and we'll see what happens there. Maybe we'll get more information on her kind of deal. I also think that if the unfortunate happens and Kvothe and Denna are separated from each other for a little bit of time, that might leave a little wiggle room for Fela to get in there. Again, I don't think Kvothe would actually get with her, because I think Denna would have to die, and like he would have to know that Denna is dead for sure, you know. Um, but leaves a little room. I would like to see him learning more and more with Elodin. I think Elodin is a very interesting character, and the fact that it seems that he is teaching him some crazy things, even the names of stuff, is very cool. I guess that's probably it. I don't really know any other big thing. Like I said, this section was a lot to do with Denna, so yeah, I guess that's it. So like I said, chapters 1 through 30, first 30 chapters of The Wise Man's Fear. I'm going to cover that. And, yeah, that's it. Till next time, read the chapters. And, make sure to, don't eat random sweets, because it could be filled with drugs.